one wave pounding on the heels of another. As each wave ebbs, another wall of water surges forward, carrying with it stones and pebbles to drop upon sand. For the sea has been a carrier since time immemorial, a carrier of driftwood and lost treasures. Man has long used the sea's carrying power to bear his vessels of commerce, to transport men and materials around the globe. The men who earn their livelihood manning ships and boats are engaged in one of our most important forms of transportation. Water transportation has fostered the growth of many cities, for most of the great cities of the world were great natural ports first, and world commerce flowing into these ports gave rise to industries which could support great populations. Water transportation brings to such ports hundreds of raw materials which must be processed and return finished products to waiting markets at home and abroad. By using our coastal shipping lanes, bulk shipments can be transported cheaply and quickly between our many ocean ports. For example, near the shores of several of our seaboard states, there are great reservoirs of oil. Close by the oil fields are huge refineries, operating day and night to manufacture petroleum products. Yet some of the crude oil and most of the refined products must be transported thousands of miles to markets. Where vast quantities are to be shipped to areas accessible to water, the cheapest, simplest, and fastest way is to send the oil by ship. Fleets of great oil tankers cruise along our coasts, each tanker carrying as many barrels of oil as several long trains could haul. The weight of the oil holds the ship low in the water as she plows along the sea lanes. As the tanker is nudged into the dock, skilled hands toss out the mooring lines, and a hookup is made between the pipes which carry the oil from ship to shore. Every connection is checked and tightened as dock workers join with the ship's crew to begin the task of emptying the tanker. One after another, the cumbersome pipes are swung toward the waiting ship, until finally all are made fast. And then the valves are opened, starting the flow of oil on the last lap of its long journey. By the time the unloading is finished and the ship is ready for another voyage, her oil rides high in the water, for the tanker is many tons lighter now. So much lighter that sometimes the propeller which drives her is almost exposed, churning the surface of the water. Back the tanker goes now, along the coastal route or across the ocean with a load of oil. Ships that sail the oceans travel along established shipping lanes that go from continent to continent throughout the world. People, as well as products, make use of transportation by water. Passengers from all of the 48 states and foreign visitors returning to their homelands begin to gather at the docks when an ocean liner is about to sail. They make their way eagerly up the gangplanks. Under the protective cover of gaily striped awnings, these travelers from all parts of our country, Fred Mason from New York and Alice Nelson from Omaha, with all the different kinds of luggage they will need for an ocean voyage. The luggage goes up its own gangplank on a baggage conveyor belt. By the time the call, "All ashore that are going ashore," is heard on the ship's loudspeakers, a tug is already moving in to push the liner out into the channel. A blast from the whistle is the ship's farewell salute to the port. Spectators and dock hands watch as the tug maneuvers into position. And the voyagers wave to the stay-at-homes left on shore. The travelers are off on their big adventure. Whether the passengers are going abroad for business or pleasure, this is a thrilling experience they will never forget, leaving the dock behind, heading for the open sea. Under her own power now, the ship plies through the harbor traffic, meeting a workhorse tanker and passing the long lines of docks where other liners and freighters are moored. To the other vessels in the harbor, this seems a routine day, but to those on the liner, there's a special significance, as the grandest lady in the land holds high the lamp that will light the way for their return. The city built on land is left behind, for the passengers are on a different kind of city now, a floating city. A floating city moving across the high seas. On its broad decks, they can watch the restless movement of the water, play a game of shuffleboard, sun themselves, or simply get acquainted. Dressed in their best, the passengers will enjoy good food and superb service in the dining rooms, for ocean liners of today offer both comfort and luxury to the guests. All too soon, the sea voyage will be over. They will be coming down the gangplank onto foreign soil. Perhaps their port of call will be some sunny harbor in Europe. Or it may be an oriental port with its strange and picturesque vessels. But abroad or at home, the ferryboat is a familiar vessel to many. Every day, thousands of people go to work, to shop, or to play, riding on boats, ferryboats. The ferry pulls away from the loading schedules as regular as bus schedules, crossing the rivers or harbors which separate cities or parts of cities. Within minutes, the ferry approaches the opposite shore. Easing into the landing, the ferry boat slows and stops. The passengers stream off to go about their business. Traveling on water is so pleasant to most of us that excursion boats are popular, whether they transport fishermen through the surf along one of our coasts or carry a whole boatload of boys on a sightseeing tour of inland waterways. Yet the backbone of transportation by water remains the transportation of products, hauling the payloads of American industry. Hauling farm machinery to till foreign fields, hauling refrigerators, automobiles, washing machines, and television sets. All may be loaded into the holds of ocean-going freighters. The winch operator, guided by the lookout man, swings the crates of merchandise up off the docks, crates of goods that will carry the label Made in USA to all parts of the world. Skillfully loaded aboard by deckhands and stevedores. Heavy drums of chemicals and fertilizers arcing up through the air, over the side, and down toward the vast storage area in the hold of the freighter. Meanwhile, at some of the Gulf Coast ports, bales of cotton that may have been grown in Alabama are starting on a journey that may take them to the textile mills in England. And at some other port, bags of grain from the fertile plains of Kansas may be on their way to make bread for the people of India. While ships such as these are being loaded with exports, other ships bearing foreign flags may be unloading the imports which are essential to our way of life. From the warehouses of Hong Kong, for instance, come goods such as tea, porcelain dinnerware, and bolts of fine silk. And these, along with hundreds of other things we do not produce for ourselves or do not produce in sufficient quantity, are unloaded from the holds of freighters which come to our shores from all over the world. Because ocean freighting is so important, it sometimes overshadows domestic trade within our own borders, and yet millions of tons of freight are shipped at relatively low cost in barges which travel up and down our rivers. Many industrial centers have sprung up along the courses of our navigable streams, and some of them, along the Mississippi, the Ohio, the St. Lawrence, and other great rivers, rival ocean ports for water shipments. This map indicates how many areas of our nation are serviced by river transportation. Indeed, water transportation is so important that vast sums are constantly spent to improve and extend our waterways. Harbors are deepened, widened, and their shorelines made permanent. Sometimes the harbor shore becomes a park-like area where people from many walks of life can share in the fascination of watching ships go down to the sea. Canals are built where no natural waterways exist. You may find canals flowing right through the heart of a city, flanked by apartment houses or by industries which depend on water transportation. The bridges of ordinary highways often draw up to let the canal vessels pass. In maintaining both natural waterways and canals, it is often necessary to employ giant dredges which free the channels from mud and sand. On the Great Lakes, blackened ore haulers chug along, loaded to the gunnels with tremendous burdens of iron ore that may have been mined in this great yawning pit in Minnesota. Iron ore that will be carried over the Great Lakes and through canals to the blast furnaces in Gary or Chicago. Here, a bridge pivots to let the ore boat through. Then the ore boat arrives at the steel mills, where unloading of the ore is done by claw-like cranes, which grasp tons of ore with every scoop. But it takes more than iron ore to make steel. It takes power. Sometimes that power comes from coal, which is loaded or unloaded at other ports on the Great Lakes. Huge mechanical loaders work at amazing speed to funnel the coal into the hatches. And at the other end of the line, the hungry jaws of giant cranes will lift the coal out to unload it into an endless line of moving cars which carry it to the mills. Of all the kinds of craft involved in transportation by water, none is more widely used than the rugged little tugboat seen here in the shipyards where it is built. Not particularly noted for graceful lines, the tugboat nevertheless has engines capable of stupendous feats. One tugboat alone can shepherd a queen of the seas away from the pier. And time and again, in any harbor, one may see a heavy barge that appears to be almost a city block long, scooting effortlessly through the water, and pushing it, only a pair of puffing little tugboats, the mighty midgets of the waterfront. Push and pull, push and pull. There's always work for the tugs. Sometimes it's a load of sand headed down the river at Pittsburgh. Sometimes it's a flatboat of railroad cars crossing the bay from Oakland to San Francisco, where the power of a tug is substituted for the train engine. Or perhaps the train connection is being made between the shores of New York and New Jersey. Seemingly outmatched by the size of its load, the tugboat chugs along, its toot the keynote of transportation by water. Transportation that is the basis for world trade, the great flow of goods and services and people from nation to nation over a far-flung network of shipping lanes. Approximately 3/4 of our Earth is covered by water, and yet we can regard this water not as a barrier, but as a universal thoroughfare for commerce among men.